Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. It is the first Monday after what was a very exciting Jazz and Arts climax. I'm sure you're eager to ask all of your questions regarding the outcome of last weekend's Jazz and Arts Festival. So without further ado, we have the Minister of Tourism who will provide some insight on what played out over the last couple of weeks. Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think I probably should allow it to be driven by questions, but of course, let me make a general comment to start off, to express our sincere thanks to all the teams that made this year the success that it was. The SLTA team, the Events Company of St. Lucia team, the CDF team, the community teams, all the sponsors who came out this year in record number to support the Jazz and Arts Festival. Let's also recognize the service providers. This year was the largest festival in terms of the number of events, but also to the largest number in terms of participation of the public. And it required a lot of service providers to make it happen. We've already started the process of reflection and review, and already started to look towards 2026, God willing, for us to have an even bigger and better festival. Like everything else, there would be shortcomings this year. There would be deficiencies, and we will focus on some of these and to see how we can overcome them for next year. I think maybe we could take some questions and I could lead off from there on it. We also have to note that we're starting to get ready for Carnival season. We have a launch on Thursday for Junior Carnival. So I'm sure you're going to get your invites for Thursday, where we will start presenting some of the details for Junior Carnival in 2026. But the process, well, the whole Carnival season officially kicks off, I think, this weekend. But you'll get some more details on Thursday.
Mr. Minister, Jeremiah.
Jerry.
Yes.
Hold on. Let's take this question, Jerry.
It's all well and good and happy to hear that you had a successful jazz festival. But what's worrying and troubling is the treatment that the organizers give the local media. And I think that's one of the things that we are really concerned about. And we'd hope that some kind of address to this. For example, local media could not get access to the event by not even getting vehicle pass until last minute. And a number of us felt that, like, we were not, no one want to be part of the jazz anymore. And I would like to hear your response to that and some of the concerns that you've been hearing about the treatment of the local media in the jazz.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even have to, belabor the point. I mean, the local media must be treated better than this. Whatever treatment you get, from what I've heard, is totally unacceptable. And I certainly want to apologize for how the local media was treated. We've had a very good relationship. The local media is one of our major stakeholders. And like I said, we've had an excellent working relationship. And there's no reason why you should be disappointed in how you were treated. No reason why. I mean, any circumstance should have been overcome by the persons responsible. I wouldn't hesitate to say that. It will certainly under my watch, it will not happen again.
And so we hope for the carnival that it does not happen.
Who's the organization?
The passes, everything.
The same thing happened for the jazz. We just hope for the carnival. It's the same people responsible, and we don't see a recurring decimal. That's all I'm saying.
I've said to you, it will not happen again.
Was the organization responsible for issuing the local media with passes, tickets, whatnot?
I mean, we can spend a lot of time, going back and forth, who was responsible, who was not. I'm not sure I want to go down that road. When it was brought to my attention, I gave certain instructions that it had to be attended to. It was not attended to satisfactorily, and that was brought to my attention, I think, yesterday, that the media was still not treated appropriately, and action will be taken to ensure it does not happen again.
Will disciplinary action be taken against the persons
It
responsible?
will, every action necessary will be taken to make sure it does not happen again. I mean, it's just simple. I mean, there's some things you just don't even bother with. You should not, the local media deserves better treatment than that. Let's just get it right.
So following that, so what's the next step and what's happening? I suppose you are happy with the jazz and then following this?
Yeah, I think from all indications, the climax, which is the big weekend, was quite successful. And you can imagine in events, there are different components of it. You know, from the production of the event on the night, the performance by the artists, there are issues to do with catering, with access, traffic management. There's so many different dimensions. And how do you judge whether it was a success or not? You know, depending on which area you involve in, you may have a fantastic experience in getting to the venue. You enter the venue well, and there's a nice vibe, the performances were great, but maybe the food wasn't great. Or sometimes you had a fantastic performance and everything worked out well, but the traffic management was a nightmare. So every, you know, there are different, you know, experiences within the overall experience. Traffic management continues to be a major concern for us. And the truth is, the event is outgrowing the infrastructure that we have. Because just figure out where the national park is located, one road leading to it. So there's one entrance road, which is the same exit road. And the parking and the shuttles. And I've been working in trying to develop an efficient, you know, park and ride system since 2005 when I was involved in cricket. We've been trying to get this right. We've had successes, we have failures. Now I'm not directly involved in the operations, so I know it's a challenge to get it right. And the cultural habits of St. Lucians do not help. People like to park their vehicle right next to where they are going, so when they're ready to leave, they can just jump in their vehicle and drive away. Nobody wants to wait too long. And I had some difficulty explaining to some people who said to me, just let everybody park around the national park. I said, if you let everybody park there, for you to get out would take 3 hours. Because there's so many vehicles that park. Each one have to come out and causing backlog. It take you 3 hours. If you use the park and ride, it will be faster. But when they're in the park and ride, nobody wants to wait 45 minutes. You know, because they feel as soon as they're ready to leave, there should be a shuttle, and the shuttle should get them there immediately to the parking area and for them to leave. So the system is not working the way it's supposed to work. And they also have some little traffic management issues too that I think we need to overcome. But that's for internal review and discussion. So last year, Saturday and Sunday, I thought we had it right. It worked last year, Saturday and Sunday. Why could we not replicate it this year? Again, that's an issue for internal review. But when you look at the totality of it, I think I love the layout of the venue. The way it was laid out, I think it was much better. There's still some issues with the entrance. Some people believe it piles up the crowd on that side as again spreading all over, and maybe you could change it wrong. All those things we'll look at. I think the performances were great. Some persons expressed their disappointment in one of the performances, but largely the performances were fantastic. The attendance was unbelievable. I think for every event, including the arts event, the turnout was really, really good. And you have to be, you know, thankful for that. So good that some people say it was AI generated, but you know, you expect that kind of comeback. Some people said that I was giving out tickets so the sales numbers would look better. I don't know how when you give out something, your sales number can look better. But the point is, you know, St. Lucians came out and supported, and the communities displayed ownership of the festival. So all in all, I think we had a tremendous festival. We still have some challenges to overcome, and we will continue to work on them. Next year is going to be exciting, God willing. We're already thinking of some changes, you know, modifications we can make. We now have the Miku venue as a venue that we have to decide what we're going to do with it. So that one is certainly something on the table. We saw the size of Kingdom Night this year. Over 8,000 patrons came out for it. We have to decide, Are we going to make it even bigger next year, and how do we do so? Because it is a special night for a demographic of our population. There were a lot of elderly people certainly on Kingdom Night. And how do we cater for them? Because these are people, if you're going to tell them, their vehicle is parked by landings and they have to walk up the stretch, and the more elderly persons. So how do we cater for the elderly on a Wednesday night, Kingdom Night? Those things we have to think about. The opening night at Minderphilly Park, we had more than 11,000 patrons there. How much bigger can we allow it to get? So we have some issues we need to reflect on. As always, we always ask St. Lucians to send in their suggestions as to who they want to see at the festival. And I know you make your suggestions. And we, like everything else, it goes into the pot, and the committee will look at it. But we were very happy with it, and I think everybody is already thinking of next year. For me personally, I'm going to drive the agenda that the arts has to continue to grow, that we want the community teams to incorporate more arts into their events, and maybe not just one day of music, maybe a number of days, including the arts, the visual arts, the performing arts, to be part of it. We want St. Lucia to become a creative space for those 2 weeks. We do not want the festival to just be a musical experience. We want it to be a broader creative experience. So a lot more support will be given to the CDF in terms of growing the arts component. We want to see in the communities the spoken word coming out, the artists having their exhibitions. We want to see the performing groups coming out, the dance groups in the communities coming out. We want to see more of the arts coming to the fore. We want to see more local talent in terms of music coming to the fore. We noticed this year there were quite a lot of musical bands, especially from the south, how we can get more of the local bands to come to the fore. So we have some objectives we'll be setting for next year, and for us to really be pushing that agenda.
Let's go back to getting to the park. The water taxis, I didn't hear you really mention them, but I feel that's a way for us to go, because last year, that's what I used, and I went in and out easy without a problem.
Yeah, well.
So the water taxis, I guess, maybe get the boats, with the boat rides, getting them to go to and from. For me, it was very easy, and that's what I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people had good experiences and some had bad experiences.
Yeah. But the water taxi was really easy.
For you?
Yeah. You park by Johnson, you take the water taxi, drop you in the park, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's a way I believe that you could maybe...
Well, we probably want people to take the water taxi from Point Seraphine rather than Marina, because when your car comes out of Johnson or even a Marina, it then starts a backup all the way. If you take it from Point Seraphine, then there is no traffic that comes up north. We want to reduce the amount of traffic coming up north. So as much as we can push it further away from the venue, the better it is. Because yes, it helps, but when all the cars start coming out of Johnson, it then causes the backup for the vehicles that will park at Pigeon Point and landings. So you see where the problem is. Yeah, so the further away from the venue we can get.
But the thing is, we went out very fast. There was no traffic, because we had time to reach before it.
No, you're at the front of the traffic.
Yeah.
Because once you pass Harbour Club, the traffic flows. Yeah. But the build-up starts there, because vehicles are coming out of Darren Sami, they come out of Johnson, they come out of the Marina. So from that point there, which is right there by Harbour Club, is where the backup starts, and it builds up all the way. So if we can take all of that and send it further down, if we can get a few thousand people leaving from Castries, whether it's Point Seraphine, whether it's the waterfront there, maybe use the Castries car park and just, hop onto something right there at the waterfront. That is a lot of traffic we would stop, from going up north. But again, we have to talk about all this, because it will require changing our cultural practices, So we're going to work on it and look at it.
Okay, Mr. Minister, festivals, how do you keep reinventing? How would you keep reinventing the Jazz and Arts Festival so it will maintain its zeal and its appeal going forward?
Well, again, is understanding what motivates people, what makes them tick, what creates the vibe. and for you to always introduce the elements of that. So we know a very strong lineup is essential, but it has to be both availability and affordability of the artists. So yes, you have your dream lineup. I called the chairman, Thaddeus Antoine, this morning and told him, who my dream artist is for Sunday. As to whether the person is or the group is available and affordable is a different issue. So they'll put together the ideal lineup and then work to achieve it, of course, once the money and the availability is there. But it is more than that. It's an experience. Because a point which was made up to me is that the Saturday crowd has always generally been a smaller crowd. Because people will go to the Friday, they will do all their tours, all their, excursions on the Saturday, skip Saturday night and then do Sunday. Because if you come to St. Lucia and you just do free nights and you never see St. Lucia, you feel you're falling short. Although this year Saturday was still very, very good. So we need to think of the total experience of St. Lucia that we're offering, and the Jazz Festival is one of them. The Jazz and Arts Festival is one of them. So you have to constantly know what are the elements that create the vibe and, really make individuals want to come back again because they've just had a fantastic experience. Again, we have to come back to our broader objectives, because some people still ask the question, did you make money on the Jazz Festival? How much it costing? And my dear friend right here is always asking me how much it's costing and how much money we made or whatnot. Because sometimes people still think in the old terms of the Jazz Festival, it was used for a particular purpose, for marketing and to bring numbers. For us now, the Jazz Festival and Arts Festival is more than that. It's about, marketing for St. Lucia still. It's about bringing in numbers still. But it's also developmental for our creatives, to develop our orange economy, to develop the creatives of St. Lucia. It's also an economic empowerment mechanism where communities now are building their own event economy in a sense. The small businesses, the community itself gets an opportunity to earn some money. So that the whole role is growing in terms of the role that it plays in our national development. So it's not a simple dollar sense. So when we start talking about, tweaking it and building it, the festival must not remain static as a music festival. It must grow into a creative space in St. Lucia. Everybody knows St. Lucia, the first 2 weeks of May, is one of the most creative places you can be in the Caribbean, whether for spoken word, whether for art exhibition, whether it's for performing arts, whether it is for visual arts, whether it is for the music itself. All of that must become part of the festival. So the attraction now is that you're not just going to St. Lucia because there is music on a weekend. You're going to St. Lucia because there's a whole creative experience. Some people may not even stay for the music really, but they came because there is some performance. Just think about it. People who love Broadway and the West End, if we can put on a major theatrical production in St. Lucia during those 2 weeks, or during
That's
that
my
last
next
week.
question. The main stage weekend is dominated by musical acts. No doubt it drives attendance and sales. But is it possible, feasible down the road that there will be a visual, instead of music, there will be a spoken
Well, not
word
instead,
performance,
not instead.
or in addition to
In addition, and that's what we move into. And that's the point I'm just making.
on main stage?
Well, it doesn't have to be at main stage. It doesn't have to be. Main stage is music. Let it stay that way. But it doesn't mean on the first day there's pure jazz for those pure jazz lovers. But that's, and this year the pure jazz had an excellent turnout. But there might be 1,000 people at the pure jazz, but there might be 1,500 viewing a major theatrical production. At the same time, it doesn't have to be that instead. We shouldn't remove the music. We should broaden the experiences that people have. So people might come just for that production. They might come just for, this. Different demographics we'll be bringing in. And I think that's how we see it. So it's about those different elements that you're going to bring in to make it successful.
All right, Minister, we saw that during the period that the artists who came down also engaged with youth in terms of
Yes,
conversations
yeah.
and dialogues, in terms of, how to better themselves within the art form. Is that a conscious act on the behalf of, on the part of government to ensure that those parts happen?
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to grow that aspect of it. So even next year, we're going to make sure that some of the persons are involved in teaching classes, and we had some of that this year to really broaden it. So in discussing the contracts, we'll look to see to what extent we can use them for developmental purposes, but also for social development, opportunities as well. And I think you will see a lot more. It has been done in the past. It's not anything new. It has been done in the past. But we're going to almost structure it now that it is part of that. Again, creating a whole new vibe about the festival that when you go to Central to perform, you're also expected to do, those socially conscious activities as well.
Jazz on the Square seems to have had a problem with time. The problem with the church, and I believe it started later than usual. I believe that's somewhere that within your areas that you'll have to check, because jazz on the church, it did clash this year and cause a problem. So,
well, again, there are many other opportunities we can put on the table. We had that problem last year, again this year. We need to respect the church and the timings for the events, but by next year we'll have the boardwalk built at the front, the waterfront, which will give us a lot of performance space. The amphitheater in Serenity Park is now completed, which will give us more options. At Point Seraphine, at one time they used to have tea time jazz at Point Seraphine. It is something we can think about. I know in the first year we came back, we did have some, I think, spoken word there. It didn't really work out the way we wanted, but it was the first year. So we'll have many other options to look at. So whilst we cannot start at the square, but there might be something on the boardwalk taking place. It might just be performers just performing there and people just assembling on the boardwalk, and then move to the square. The different things. Maybe go to not Constitution Park, but there'll be other options we can look at. You don't need to start at 2:00 when mass has finished. There will be other options.
Any more questions?
Yes.
No. Any other question?
You're not interested in?
So can I ask my question?
Sure.
Where are we now in terms of dealing with the Sagassum situation? Last week you'd have told us, I think Cabinet had to have discussions. So what's the plan to deal with this?
Well, when I go to Cabinet, I'll find out. Yeah.
You told us last week you were going to discuss
Yeah,
this.
I told you last week we had asked the Ministry of Agriculture to come up with some recommendations for today's Cabinet for discussion. So when I go back in there, I'll find out.
Oh, okay.
You have any suggestions? You want to share that?
No.
But I can tell you, but it's a serious issue that not the entire region and everybody's trying to figure out how to deal with it. But we're going to see what's possible and what we can do. Work with the hoteliers in particular and see what we can do. Yes, I think she.
Kingdom Night.
Yeah.
Are you, because I know that you said that working with the artists that you would definitely want to bring, because they would be occupied and you will not be able to reach them. I know that you were looking forward to bring Ada or Sinash. Not Sinash, Mercy Chinwo. Are you working on that now to make sure? Because in our successes in Kingdom Night or other jazz events, it has to do with the type of artists that you bring. Because these are big-time singers, and people love them and their songs. So I believe if we continue to bring those type of artists down, this is what causes the numbers to grow. This is what causes people to get attached to those events. So being a Christian, and I love music, I love worship music, with Sinash and Ada, are you all working already to get those artists down?
Yeah, well, I think Mr. Antoine, the appropriate time. I'm sure he's already working on the lineup for next year. The committee works very hard, and I really have to say thank you to the committee for a year, for especially the last 2 to 3 years, coming up with the fantastic lineups. And I can tell you they will not fall short next year. We just hope that nothing goes wrong and that there is no cancellation of jazz again. So let's see. Maybe sometime you should ask the opposition what's their policy position on jazz, that if election should be held, do they plan to cancel jazz once again? No, it's a fair question, no?
You should answer with some of them who were actually in attendance over the weekend.
Well,
To get their feedback.
it'd be interesting. I leave it to you and the others, Jerry and Lynn, to find out for me, please. What's their policy position, Jazz? If for some reason they win the next election, will they cancel the Jazz and Arts Festival? Yeah?
Well, just shifting gears from jazz, since no one else have further questions on that. In the hotel construction sector, I mean, we're hitting the halfway point in the year. What can we expect in terms of new hotels, new more rooms for St. Lucia for the last half of this year?
Yeah. Well, a lot is happening. We very shortly will be making some major announcements. But for sure, Secrets is going to open 1st of June. Atlas is going to open Lifeco, I think 1st of September or something like this. I know the Casabah Hotel will be handed over to the Hyatt Group towards the ending of the year. And a couple of other developments will actually start in the second half of the year. I know there is a tour of the Atlas development tomorrow. The Rodney Bay City Center will also be touring it tomorrow because they too will be building a hotel there. There'll be quite a lot happening. And I'm waiting for the major announcements because we need to wait on the partners overseas to make the announcements. We cannot just make the announcements. But the best is yet to come. I can tell you there's a lot more that will be coming. And we'll be excited to share the news with you once we can.
Okay. Do you anticipate as a possible challenge that given the rapid expansion, more volume, whether it's tourists, visitors, etc., that the local infrastructure can handle that kind of pressure, that kind of that extra capacity?
I mean, that's our biggest worry. It's actually not my portfolio responsibility, but it is something we always put on the table. The infrastructure must be able to support the growth. Sometimes you can use the growth to propel the infrastructural improvement because it forces the infrastructure to respond to the demands of the growth. So yes, it is a big worry. The road network, how are we going to move? If we're going to have 3,000 more rooms just in the north, how are we going to move people up to the north and move around? The water supply, the electricity, there's so much that we need to make sure that the infrastructure can support it. Well, my role is to bring in the numbers and bring in the investment. I'm sure on the other side, my colleagues are equally captivated with the necessity to make sure the infrastructure can support the growth. And St. Lucia is trending. We're trending in tourism and investment. There is deep interest in St. Lucia. There's a lot going on to try to undermine, the image and reputation of St. Lucia, but we are working hard constantly, every day, to ensure that does not succeed.
I'm probably going to ask the hardest question here, again, as usual. But you may have been aware or been made aware of the differences in opinions regarding the CIP programs in the region. You had the Antigua Prime Minister responding to comments made by the Vincentian Prime Minister. His sentiments on CIP is well known, well documented. You care to weigh in on
I don't comment on what Prime Ministers say.
Okay.
I don't. In my private capacity, I can, but as a Minister of Government, it's not appropriate. I leave that to my boss to comment on.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. So as we all know, the Prime Minister recently had a meeting with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, last week. I don't think there was an opportunity up until today for the press to get some insight on how it played out. So now is that opportunity. Prime Minister, Honorable Press.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The OECS heads of government met with the U.S. Secretary of State, the Honorable Excellency Marco Rubio, on the 6th of May 2025. The OECS heads of government conveyed with clarity the region's principal concerns, the implications of recently announced U.S. tariffs on regional economies, the need for the Cuban medical support personnel to support the OECS public health systems, and the need for a balanced approach to security and the structural trade that continues to disadvantage small island economies. In addressing the 10% U.S. tariffs now imposed on all imports, including from the OECS, our leaders emphasized the economic hardship this measure may impose, particularly in sectors dependent on U.S. goods, such as health, education, and food security. Additionally, the OECS heads brought to the Secretary attention that the U.S. enjoyed an overwhelming favorable balance of trade advantage with the OECS. In 2023, the U.S. exported $2.23 billion to the OECS in comparison to U.S. $67.5 million in OECS exports to the USA. The OECS reaffirmed its readiness to engage in constructive dialogue on fair trade and development and urged that this matter be reconsidered in light of the region's vulnerabilities and the close interdependence with U.S. markets. The issue of Cuban medical missions was addressed directly. OECS leaders reiterated that these programs are neither exploitative nor in violation of international labor norms. They understood the critical role Cuban doctors play in providing essential health services, especially in rural and underserved communities. While open to strengthening oversight mechanisms, the OECS firmly rejected the mischaracterization of these partnerships as human trafficking. On regional security, the OECS expressed appreciation for U.S. support for initiatives such as the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, but also emphasized the need for a broader definition of security that includes disaster preparedness, climate resilience, and economic security. With hurricane season imminent, the U.S. welcomed the reactivation of the U.S. early warning and emergency response programs. OECS leaders reaffirmed their sovereign right to maintain diverse and diplomatic economic relations, including China, rooted in developmental cooperation. They assured the U.S. that these relationships are non-military in nature and are not driven by geopolitical alignment, but by economic necessity. The first engagement with Secretary Rubio was respectful, candid, and productive. It laid a solid foundation for continued dialogue and joint action. The OECS looks forward to tangible follow-through on the commitments made and reiterates its readiness to work with the United States on a renewed agenda of cooperation grounded in shared values, respect, and partnership. The OECS heads, and I led the delegation, we said to the Secretary of State, and I quote, "We fully respect the mandate entrusted to you by the American people and the agenda your administration pursues. We are also compelled, respectfully and forthrightly, to share the perspectives and pressing concerns of our own people. This meeting represents an opportunity not simply for dialogue, but for alignment towards cooperation that is both principled and pragmatic." Yes.
Coming out of this meeting, what does it mean for the Cuban medical program? Do we have to end it? Can we still continue the program?
The Cuban medical program is continuing. We explained to the U.S. that there was no human trafficking. There were concerns that there may have been human trafficking, etc. We explained to the U.S., to the Secretary of State, that there was no human trafficking. The Cuban personnel in St. Lucia were paid a salary. They lived in the country. They had their own homes, their own social life. They lived like anybody that comes from anywhere else, like the Indian doctors come from India. But so we think there's a better understanding, and the program, as far as we got from the meeting, will not be stopped. But we're ready to answer any questions. You see, it's open. We can answer any other questions that the U.S. wants answered.
Any discussions on our programs, the Citizenship by Investment programs,
In fact, the U.S. has actually started a CIP program. If you know the Trump program, the Trump card, they call it, $5 million in the gold card. So the U.S. understands. In fact, the U.S. have been working with us. If you recall, there was a meeting held sometime last year that I attended where the U.S. gave us, and you know that history is something that we mustn't forget. The U.S. gave us 6 points that we should follow. We've done all of them, and then the U.S. actually have not raised any questions about the program. Anything they ask, we give them. In fact, the firms that due diligence for us, actually, some of them are U.S. firms, and then that came up. But the U.S. expressed nothing negative at the meeting to the CIP program. What they continue to want is proper due diligence. That is what they continue to want. And then there's another aspect which we are working on, which is biometric scrutiny of the people who get our citizenship, and we are working on that. But the U.S. have not expressed any adverse, as they haven't expressed it to the CIP program.
So there shouldn't be any concerns regarding any possible restrictions in terms of visas or anything?
There are no, you know, sometimes sometimes it amazes me why, for political reasons, we always have to wish bad on our country. And it's very, because I'll tell you something. When anybody goes for a visa, they don't go and say, I'm yellow, I'm red, They go for a visa. Now, to imply that there is some relationship between, it's actually based on raw politics. That's not necessary. We can discuss the issues, but to link somebody wanting to go and shop in the U.S., when you go on holiday in the U.S., to link that with the CIP program, it's something that we should not do as a country. We should not do. I've said to you all the time, members of the press, and sometimes I don't think you quote me enough. I've said that this job is a temporary job. And anybody who becomes prime minister of the country is going to be temporary. So we must not, in the quest to become prime minister or to run the country, that we burn it down. So because what we say here has a serious impact on the people who listen. So I don't think that it's right first to link CIP program to visas and people going to shop in United States. I don't think it's right. But as far as I'm concerned, the U.S. said nothing about that. Rubio said nothing about in our discussions with him. Nothing of that nature was said. Nothing.
Okay. Regarding the whole tariff policy of the U.S., could we see a possible pause on tariffs of our exports to the U.S.?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. When the tariff issue came out and I was questioned, I said to you that we formed a subcommittee of the cabinet, and as usual, I was criticized for not doing anything. The normal thing, and I ended up being right, because you see, talk is cheap. We can go out and we can talk, but you must understand the reality of the situation. The reality situation is the U.S. government, the U.S. people, elections have consequences. The U.S. voted for President Donald Trump. They voted for him. They voted for his policies. They voted for what he stood for. Who am I to say to the U.S. people that they must not support the policies of their president? It is folly for him to go and make wild statements about U.S. policy. What we must do as small islands, we must align ourselves so that our interests can be protected. And this is why I said it was too early when the tariff situation came out for him to make any statement. So we formed a committee. But as usual, all the prophets were out making all kinds of statements. And look at that right now. The tariffs have been slashed, have been stopped for 90 days between China and the U.S. So I was right. I'm sorry to tell you, but I was right in that I was cautious and I took my time and I said, let's form a committee. I didn't go around and make wild statements of statements of grandeur to prove that I was, So, truth is, the tariffs have been stopped for 90 days. I understand that the US has come to an agreement with the UK. So it's a very fluid situation. And with small islands, we're waiting to see how our interests can be aligned to support the people of St. Lucia. In the meantime, we are taking some steps to help in the cost of living. Number one, say in the budget, we are zero rating a few more food items. We have been discussions with the Chamber of Commerce on these items. That means that the price of a few goods should go down by 12.5% immediately. Immediately. The goods on the basket of goods, we are removing the service charge on them because the service charge was for, I think, a year or so. That's over. Remove the service charge. That's going to happen, if not next week, the week after. We expect on the 1st of July, the cost of a few items in the supermarkets, which we list, supposed to go down immediately because we're going to zero rate them. As you know, consumers began paying less for gasoline. They began paying $16 per gallon for gasoline. That began. In the new price, I'm reviewing the new price structure for gasoline, which should be implemented, I think, 23rd of May. So these things are happening. But I can tell you that in terms of the cost of living, the government has taken some decisive steps to cause some reduction in the price of certain goods. Reduction, but remember, we only control the price. We do not control the cost. We control the price. But we look for some changes and I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce because you are working with them for that. I don't know whether you read the last Chamber of Commerce review that said that our economy, there's a great confidence in our economy. I'm very pleased for that, in that independent people are saying that our economy is doing well. I'm very pleased to hear that. And I want that to continue happening because that was an independent. You see, sometimes I hear people criticize figures. These figures are not produced by any prime minister. These figures come from professionals, people who that is their job. So when the chamber has a survey that says that there's greater confidence in the economy of the country, I'm very pleased. If they say there is not, my job is to try to improve it, not to attack it. I never attack the messenger. So I'm very pleased that independent people, the IMF, the ECCB, the World Bank, now the Chamber of Commerce are saying that the economy of St. Lucia is on the right trajectory. We want to continue in that vein, understanding that there are downside risks, understanding we are in hurricane season, we know what's happening, understanding the situation between tariffs is still very fluid. But right now, the economy is on the right path, and I'm very pleased with it.
Just to be clear, though, that what I was asking, the 10% tariffs on our exports to the US, what is happening with that?
What is happening with that is, I think, again, it's very fluid. It's very fluid. That 10% in terms of our exports is, sorry to say it, we don't export much to the US. We don't. $63 million, all the islands. So it will not affect $63 million worth between the 6 of islands. But in terms of the imports, if it's implemented, then our imports will go up by 10%, which we're taking some measures here to amend, to adjust with our zero rating items, etc.
Just back to your old question, you mentioned that prices of goods will go down. Will sanitary napkins be one of those items by chance?
I don't think you will. That topic, that has been. I was out of the country. I understand that was a very explosive issue. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
which was
it's expensive.
actually,
I understand.
That was really. I did something. Sometimes it's a Lucia. Sometimes when I hear people make it, they're actually comical. I mean, I don't know if if people are playing to the gallery, you know what I mean? But I mean, really? But we have also we've removed the VAT on these items already, so I don't think there is much that can happen in terms of the price coming down. Once the cost goes up, there's nothing more we can really do because I think the VAT is off already. So that's why we moved to support people at the educational institutions. That's why I moved to do that. And actually, I was very pleased because in this job, when you get criticized internally, and you hear what comes from outside, the number of women, organizations of women, of young people who have called the government, listen to me, that was a progressive step. And we hope that other islands can continue. That's what gives me the strength to go ahead. Because you get criticized locally by people who have their own ulterior motives and people from the outside and local women's groups. You will not believe it. The number of people locally who have said to me, Prime Minister, we applaud that move. Teachers who say we've had to use our own to give our students. Teachers, people on the ground who said so. And another thing that teachers are very pleased for is we are paying them their August salaries. The August salaries, so in August, all temporary teachers will get their salaries. So they're going to get a full 12-month salary. Again, that's something that teachers have been very pleased about. Yes. So there are many things that happen in St. Lucia that are pleasing to the people of St. Lucia. You understand? It may not be pleasing to a few individuals, but very pleasing to the people. And that's what's important. The people are the ones who are important. And then it's very pleasing to the people of St. Lucia. And that makes me extremely happy. How people in St. Lucia are pleased. You see it all the time. Of course we have problems. There's never been a perfect St. Lucia. There never will be a perfect world. But the fact is, small incremental steps are improving the quality of life for the people of St. Lucia. And these things touch them at 1,900 people now have got permanent employment. You know what that means to them? They can go to a bank and get a loan. Before, all they had to do was to get short-term loans at 20% interest, because they only had it for 12 months. Now they can go to a bank and listen to me, I have a job. So I've instructed the Ministry of the Public Service at the earliest possible opportunity to give these people their letters of appointment. So they are civil servants, 1,900 of them. We've directly improved their lives. And they are happy. Something they've wanted for years. But we've done it. They're happy. So you see, I want you to talk to the people who benefit from these programs. Many programs. Paying the CXC. You know the amount of people who could not pay their CXCs? Now we're paying for 4. Normally you need 5. So most of them now only have to pay for 1 more. That's a significant step. You know, if your father can afford it, doesn't make any difference. You can pay 15 CXCs. But if you can't afford it, if you're a single mother, and the government now pays your utility fees for the schools, facility fees, they pay. Then the government is paying your CXC. That's a significant change in your life. That's what we want to do. Change people's lives. That's what we are doing.
Would you at this point be able to give us the costing of the purchase of the Edgewater lot?
I said in the budget, it costs $14.5 million.
And the project now, what
that additional cost is because, again, let me explain. That building belongs to the people of St. Lucia. It is, right now, instead of paying the rent to somebody else, instead of making some landlord rich, instead of paying some landlord's mortgage, we're paying our own mortgage. The work has started on the lot, on the building. We purchased, there's a purchase agreement with the Ajuda family for $14.5 million. That process is continuing. So that land is going to be added to the project, and then we will be able to own that land and own the building. As to the total cost of the project, when that is added, I'll be able to give it to you.
In terms of the design, though, do you know where this will have cut any, I guess, room or
No. What's happening? No, that in terms of the size, it's the same. In fact, they say in Pato, on bien qu'a fait pour mal. Here's what will happen. We will have a beautiful set of green space in the middle of Castries, right? We have Sir John Compton. We probably put Sir George Charles next to him, so we can have a heroes park. So just think about Castries with a nice green space. You understand? A House of Justice next to it, a beautiful green space. Our heroes, John Compton, George Charles, probably somebody else in the center. Just think about it, you know. So, what is it? Pato on bien qu'a fait pour mal. That's it.
Oh, Prime Minister, today is International Nurses Day. I know in your budget you did make some announcements concerning nurses at school.
Yeah.
A refresher on that?
In fact, we are right now in discussions, not with nurses, but with doctors. You know, there was an issue with the doctors on contract. And then we applaud the use of our doctors. We think our doctors always give good injections. So we are speaking to them, and we want to improve their status. We're having discussions with them now as we speak. In terms of nurses, we are paying for, you know, there's a dearth of nurses worldwide. I don't know if you saw on television sometime last week or so, the Barbados again nurses from Ghana. You see, we pretend many times that St. Lucia is the only country in the world. There's a little place called St. Lucia, and the whole world goes around, and St. Lucia is just there. So you make loud statements of things that we know really don't make any sense. There is, since COVID, there's a dearth of nurses. Nurses are leaving to seek what they think most of them are greener pastures. In St. Lucia, listen to me. The cost of training these nurses is high. The government has said, whilst we deal with that, we're going to pay for those who are there, pay their final years, pay their second year, and those that come in their first year. Then we'll see how that goes, and it will be reviewed at some point. But we are paying for the nurses, and we applaud the work that they do. We applaud their work. We have a lot of confidence in the system. We do not think that they practice any sort of deliberately practice any malpractice. We're very pleased with them, and we thank them for the service that they give to the people of St. Lucia.
Okay, hard political question. My colleagues are afraid to ask it. This week, the MP for Vieux South is going to have a political meeting in his constituency. News reporter language. Speculation is rife. He's going to make an announcement concerning his political future. Care to preempt, or what's your thoughts on his on what's to come where Dr. Anthony is concerned?
All I can tell you is that Dr. Anthony was Prime Minister of St. Lucia. I worked in his cabinet. He had the privilege of serving with him in his cabinet from 1997. I also had the privilege of being his deputy. He's a gentleman I've had the highest esteem and highest regard for. I think he's done wonders for St. Lucia. I think he's worked in his constituency. In fact, we won together in 1997, and we've served the constituency from that time. I haven't been privileged to what he's going to say on Wednesday, but I'm sure anything that he's going to say is going to be for the well-being of his constituency and well-being of the country. So I'll wait like you with bated breath what he's going to say.
and obviously your party is ready in the event that he decides to depart from the political scene.
Our party is ready for all eventualities. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.